Welcome to Shatter.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. I wasn't expecting the end of my marriage to start over breakfast. It was early, a gray Saturday morning, the kind where the air feels heavy before it even rains. I'd made coffee, scrambled eggs, and set the table for two. We didn't do big birthday celebrations anymore, but I thought maybe this year could be different. Maybe it could be a reset. So I asked her, half smiling, trying to keep it light, what she wanted for her birthday. She didn't pause to think. She didn't laugh it off. She didn't even look at me. She just said, "You disappear." Her tone was flat, not angry, not joking either, just cold enough to leave no doubt she meant it. I stared at her across the table, waiting for her to backtrack, to smirk, to add some sarcastic, "Just kidding." But she didn't. She took another bite of toast like she'd ordered coffee instead of detonating the last 10 years of our lives. The eggs on my plate went cold. The clock on the wall ticked louder than it should have. I realized I wasn't shocked, just finished. I didn't ask why. I didn't demand an explanation. I didn't raise my voice. Instead, I stood, cleared my plate, and rinsed it under the tap. She watched me, probably expecting a fight. But fights are for people trying to save something. I was done. That day, I moved through the house like a guest. I avoided her, not out of fear, but because I didn't see the point in speaking anymore. Every word from here on out would be wasted. By noon, I had a plan forming in my head. Not revenge, not drama. Just an exit. A clean one. In the garage, I found my old duffel bag and set it behind a stack of boxes. I didn't start packing yet. No, this had to be done right. Quietly. Completely. One move at a time until there was nothing left of me for her to hold on to. That night, she was on the couch scrolling her phone, her face lit by the blue glow of the screen. I walked past without a word and went upstairs. Lying in bed, I realized something important. She'd asked me to disappear, and I was going to give her exactly what she wanted, just not the way she thought. The next morning, I woke up before her. I didn't stare at the ceiling or replay her words from yesterday. I already knew what they meant. I didn't need clarification. When someone hands you the truth, you don't hand it back. Instead, I moved. By 6:30 a.m., I'd pulled my passport, birth certificate, and bank documents from the filing cabinet in the office. They went straight into my backpack, along with a portable hard drive and a few old family photos she probably didn't even remember we had. She came downstairs at 7, hair messy, wearing the same sweatshirt she'd had on the night before. She looked at the coffee pot, then at me. I was already dressed, jeans, jacket, shoes on. "Going somewhere?" she asked. I sipped my coffee and answered, "Yeah." That was all. No details. No timetable. I left before she finished pouring her mug. At the bank, I opened a new checking account in my name only and transferred half my savings into it. The clerk didn't ask questions, and I didn't volunteer answers. From there, I drove to a storage facility 20 minutes away, paid for a medium-sized unit, and dropped off the first small load from my car, things I'd been meaning to donate. By lunchtime, I'd already erased myself from the upstairs office. The shelves were empty except for a few random binders and a broken stapler. The real contents were now in boxes at the storage unit, labeled in a way only I would understand. I spoke to her once that day. She asked if I could pick up milk on my way home. I said sure, and hung up before she could say anything else. That night, we ate dinner in silence. She scrolled on her phone. I read emails on my laptop. On the surface, it was just another quiet evening between two people who'd stopped trying. But underneath, I was already gone. No outbursts. No dramatic speeches. Just the slow, deliberate cutting of threads until there'd be nothing left connecting us. She wanted me to disappear. The difference was, when I was done, I wouldn't be leaving a trail. Over the next week, I worked in shadows. Every morning, I left earlier than usual, claiming work deadlines. In reality, I was making runs to the storage unit, each trip carrying away pieces of my life she wouldn't notice missing. My camera gear, my favorite jackets, the tools my father gave me. I left gaps just wide enough to pass for clutter, not absence. She didn't question it. She was too wrapped up in her own world, her phone always in her hand, her eyes somewhere far from me. On Wednesday, I met with a property manager downtown. He showed me a small loft on the top floor of an old brick building. Exposed beams, high windows, a view of the street below. It smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings. I signed the lease on the spot, setting the move-in date for 6 weeks out. Plenty of time to finish extracting myself without noise. That night, she made pasta for dinner and asked if I'd be free on her actual birthday the following week. Her tone was casual, but I could feel something under it. Curiosity, maybe even suspicion. I said I'd have to check my schedule and kept eating. 2 days later, I shifted the plan forward. I'd realized there was no need to wait for her birthday. The faster I moved, the less chance she had to sense what was happening. On Saturday morning, I made my biggest move yet. I transferred the car title into my name only. The joint credit card? Closed before noon. The joint savings? Emptied into my private account. Each action was clean, legal, irreversible. That afternoon, I noticed her watching me from the living room as I carried a small box out to my car. I didn't rush. I didn't explain. I just loaded it into the trunk and drove away. By the end of the day, the storage unit was half full. Looking at those boxes stacked neatly in the dim light, I felt something I hadn't in months: calm. When I came home that night, she was sitting on the couch, her laptop open, but her eyes fixed on me. She didn't say a word. Neither did I. The silence between us wasn't just empty anymore. It was loaded, and soon, it would be permanent. The following week, the shift in her behavior was impossible to miss. She started lingering in the kitchen when I made coffee, asking small, meaningless questions. She hovered by the door when I left for work, almost as if she wanted to say something but couldn't decide how. I didn't engage. Every answer I gave was short, neutral, uninviting. The more space I created, the more restless she became. By Thursday, I noticed her checking the garage more often. I'd catch her glancing at my side of the closet. She was starting to see the gaps, the empty hangers, the missing items. But she hadn't asked yet. I kept the pace steady. That evening, while she was on a video call in the living room, I went upstairs and removed the last of my personal files from the office. They were already backed up, but I wanted every physical trace gone. When I was done, the room looked like it belonged to a stranger, sterile, impersonal. Friday night was her birthday. She'd invited a few friends over, something she hadn't done in years. I stayed out of the way, sitting in the corner with a drink while she played the perfect hostess. But I caught the sideways glances from her closest friend, Megan, sharp, measuring, like she could sense the undercurrent. At one point, I stepped outside for air. Megan followed a few minutes later. She didn't waste time. "You're not sticking around, are you?" she said. I didn't confirm or deny it. I just looked at her, then past her, and went back inside. The next morning, she was quieter than usual. Not angry, just unsettled. She asked if I was all right. I told her I was fine and went on with my day. By Sunday, the atmosphere in the house had shifted entirely. She was watching me without looking like she was watching. Her voice was softer, her movements slower, as if she thought a gentler approach might pull me back in. But she didn't know that my mind was already in that loft downtown, that I'd already decided the exact morning I'd walk out for the last time. Every box in the storage unit was a step closer to silence. Not the kind she'd asked for as a cruel birthday wish, but the kind I would deliver as a permanent gift. By Monday morning, I'd set the clock in my head. For days, that's all I needed to tie up every loose end and vanish. At work, I finalized my remote arrangements. My boss thought I was just shifting to a home office, not relocating entirely. I didn't correct him. The less anyone knew, the cleaner my departure would be. That evening, I went through the house one last time with a mental checklist. Anything sentimental that wasn't already in storage went into the trunk of my car. My father's fishing knife. The leather journal I'd kept in my 20s. A photo of my mother, hidden behind books on a shelf she never touched. She was in the kitchen when I came back in, stirring a pot of soup. I noticed her eyes flick toward the door I'd just closed. She didn't ask what I'd been carrying. Instead, she said, "We should talk soon." I didn't answer. Talking was for people still negotiating terms. I was past that. On Tuesday, I paid the first month's rent and deposit for the loft in cash. The property manager handed me the keys, and I slipped them into my jacket pocket without looking at them. Just knowing they were there was enough. Wednesday night, she tried a different tactic. She brought up old memories, trips we'd taken, places we'd said we'd go back to. I let her talk, but I didn't give her what she was looking for. My responses were polite, non-committal. Her eyes searched mine, but whatever connection she was trying to revive had been severed weeks ago. Thursday was my final preparation day. I opened a new P.O. box, forwarded my mail, and changed my main email password. That night, I withdrew enough cash to last me 2 months without touching a card. She noticed my mood was different, calmer, sharper, too still. At one point, she stood in the hallway, watching me pack a small overnight bag. "Going somewhere tomorrow?" she asked. I zipped it shut, set it by the door, and said, "Yes." No explanation. No return question. That night, I lay in bed beside her, listening to her breathing slow as she fell asleep. I wasn't thinking about what to take anymore. I was thinking about what to leave behind. And in the morning, she'd wake to find most of it was her. Friday began before the sun. I was already dressed when the first light hit the blinds, my bag zipped, the rest of my essentials already at the loft. The coffee maker gurgled quietly in the kitchen. I moved through the house like I was walking through a stranger's property, touching nothing, leaving nothing. She came downstairs in a robe, hair still tangled from sleep. Her eyes fell on the bag by the door. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice still thick with mourning. I took a sip of coffee, set the mug down, and said, "I've got somewhere to be." No explanation. No pause. Her brows drew together, but she didn't press it. Maybe she thought I was bluffing, that this was some petty maneuver to make her react. She didn't understand yet. This wasn't a performance. I left without breakfast, without a glance over my shoulder. At the loft, I unloaded the last few things from my car and set them in their places. The space was quiet, the air untouched by anyone else's presence. I stood by the window, looking down at the street, and realized that from this point on, I would only go back to the house once more. And when I did, it would be to erase myself entirely. Midday, I returned. She was in the living room, laptop open, pretending to work. I walked straight past her and up to the bedroom. The closet on my side was almost bare now. Just a couple of shirts I didn't care about, a pair of old sneakers. I took them anyway. When I came back down, she looked up and asked, "Are you leaving me?" The words were too calm, like she'd rehearsed them in her head. I didn't answer. I set the last box by the door and went to the kitchen for my mug. Her voice followed me. "You can't just walk out without saying anything." But I could, and I was. That evening, I stayed at the loft. No calls, no texts. My phone was on silent in the other room. The hum of the fridge was the only sound. I made a simple dinner, ate alone, and slept better than I had in months. Tomorrow, the real disappearance would begin. Because there's leaving someone, and then there's making sure they can't follow. Saturday morning, I drove to the house one last time. The street was quiet, the air sharp with the kind of stillness that makes you feel like you're trespassing. I unlocked the door and stepped inside without hesitation. She was still asleep upstairs. I could hear the faint rhythm of her breathing from the hall. That sound used to mean comfort. Now it meant nothing. I moved quickly. In the office, I unplugged the last of my electronics. Printer, scanner, the laptop charger I'd left behind. Into the box they went. From there, I swept through the kitchen, pulling my knives, my coffee grinder, even the heavy cast iron pan my dad gave me. Everything I touched belonged to me before it belonged to us. In the bedroom, I left the mattress bare on my side, took my pillow, my sheets, and the small reading lamp from my nightstand. The closet was already stripped clean. I checked the drawers one last time, empty. Downstairs, I slid the spare house key from my keyring and set it on the counter. No note. No explanation. On my way out, I paused in the living room. Her laptop was still on the coffee table, screen dark. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. My absence would speak louder than anything I could type. I loaded the last box into the car, closed the trunk, and drove to the storage unit. Everything fit neatly into the space I'd carved out over the past weeks. No clutter. No loose ends. By noon, I was back at the loft, arranging my things into their new places. The space felt different now, full, anchored. Mine. I knew she'd wake up to a house that looked the same at first glance. The couch still there, the dishes still in the sink. But then she'd notice. The gaps. The absences. The quiet. And when she reached for her phone to call me, she'd find my number already blocked. That night, I sat by the loft window with the city lights spilling in. I wasn't thinking about what she was feeling. That was her business now. All I knew was that for the first time in years, every square foot around me was mine. Every choice mine. Every silence mine. She wanted me gone. Now, she had exactly what she asked for, and nothing she could do to undo it. By Sunday morning, the ripple had already started. I didn't have to see her to know it. The silence on my phone wasn't the calm kind anymore. It was the tense, waiting kind. I could picture her pacing the kitchen, checking her messages, wondering why mine never came. By mid-afternoon, the first sign appeared. An email from our joint insurance provider, confirming that my name was removed from her policy. I hadn't even needed to request it. She was already reacting. That evening, Megan called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail that started polite and ended sharp. You can't just disappear like this. But the truth was, I could. That was the entire point. I spent the rest of the day at the loft, rearranging furniture, unpacking the last boxes. My books lined the shelves in neat rows. My clothes hung evenly spaced in the closet. There was no trace of hesitation anywhere. Monday, I changed my number. It took less than 15 minutes at the carrier store. The old one had been with me for years, a link to too many people, too many moments I didn't want revisited. When I walked out with the new SIM activated, I felt lighter. I went to work as usual, but my route home ended at the loft. No detours. No passing by the old street. I wasn't interested in seeing how she was taking it. That was her process to live through. On Tuesday, the first knock came at my door. Loud, impatient. I didn't need to check the peephole to know who it was. She called my name once, twice, then went quiet. After a minute, the footsteps retreated down the hall. She still didn't understand. This wasn't a fight, and there was no making up. This was removal. By Wednesday, the loft felt entirely mine. The bed was my own, the fridge stocked only with what I liked, the walls bare but clean. I didn't need to fill them with anything yet. The emptiness was part of the point. Some people think revenge is a loud act, a slam of the door, a shouted truth. They're wrong. The sharpest revenge is to become unreachable. And in that silence, they finally hear every word you never said. By Thursday, her attempts had shifted from anger to desperation. She didn't know my new number, but she tried every other channel: email, social media, even a message through an old coworker. I ignored them all. That night, I went out for a late walk. The streets were quiet, lit by the yellow haze of street lamps. As I crossed back toward my building, I saw her. She was leaning against a parked car across the street, arms folded, scanning the entrance like she'd been waiting. For a moment, our eyes met. Hers were wide, searching, almost frantic. She took a step forward, her mouth opening to speak. I didn't break stride. I walked past her, across the street, into the building, and let the door close between us. No raised voice. No final conversation. No explanation. Inside the elevator, I felt my pulse slow again. This was the last time I would see her in person. Not because she wouldn't try again, she might, but because I'd never give her the opening. Back in the loft, I poured a glass of water and stood by the window, looking out at the street where she'd been. The spot was empty now. Friday morning, I called the property manager of the old house. I told him to remove my name from the lease and forward all remaining mail to the P.O. box. When I hung up, the last legal tie between us was gone. The rest of the day was simple. I worked, ate dinner alone, and packed a small bag for the weekend. Not for travel, just to keep by the door, a reminder that I was free to leave anywhere, anytime, without asking anyone's permission. That night, I slept deeply. No restless dreams. No thoughts of her face in the street. In the end, it wasn't the leaving that mattered most. It was the absence that followed. The quiet that filled every space where her voice used to be. The way my life fit neatly into itself again, without the weight of her shadow pressing against it. Some endings are loud and messy. Mine was clean, surgical, absolute. And when she finally realized that, truly realized it, it wouldn't be the moment I walked away that hurt her most. It would be the moment she understood I was never coming back. Saturday morning, the city felt sharper, cleaner. I woke before sunrise, brewed coffee, and sat at the window, watching the street below come to life. The air in the loft was still, but it wasn't empty. It was mine. Every square inch had been claimed, not with force, but with presence. There was no trace of her here. No stray sweater on the chair, No forgotten mug in the sink. Her absence had stopped feeling like a gap and started feeling like space, space I could breathe in. Around noon, I got an email from a mutual friend. It wasn't a direct plea, just a single sentence. She's not doing well. I closed it without replying. That wasn't my problem anymore. Whatever storm she was standing in, she'd built it herself. In the afternoon, I walked through the city. Bought myself a watch I'd wanted for years, the kind I used to talk myself out of. It wasn't a celebration gift. It was a marker. A reminder of the day I stopped asking permission to live the way I wanted. By evening, the sun dipped low, throwing golden light into the loft. I poured a drink, sat at the kitchen counter, and thought about how quiet my life had become. Not the hollow quiet of something missing, but the grounded quiet of something restored. Somewhere across the city, she was probably replaying the last few weeks, trying to pinpoint the exact moment she lost her grip. The truth is, it wasn't one moment. It was a series of them. Small, deliberate steps I'd taken while she wasn't looking. By the time she realized, I was already gone in every way that mattered. And that's the part people never see coming. They think endings are a single act, a slammed door, a final word. But the real ending happens in silence, long before the other person knows they've been written out. That night, I left my phone on the counter, turned off the lights, and stood by the window. The city moved on below me, indifferent. I liked that, because now, I was a ghost in her story, but fully alive in mine. I didn't disappear. I just stopped existing where she could reach me. And in that unreachable space, I found exactly what I'd been missing. Myself. Been through it. When they crossed the line, and you made sure they felt it.